Test, test, test.
Okay. Good afternoon. Um, you know what? Well, I'm thinking because it looks like the sun is shining in this one, maybe everyone wants to shift to this side. But remember, Jesus separated the sheeps and the goats. And if you don't remember, the goats were left on the left-hand side, and the sheep were on his right-hand side. It, it, it depends what you consider right versus left. But if you guys can, okay, if you can see. All right, this is good? Okay. Is it? It depends on the Congress. Is it better off for you guys, or you want them on? Okay, we'll leave them off. All righty. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, those of you who came back this afternoon. I really had hoped most of our younger people were here because a lot of this information is important to them to change the perspective of how they see themselves or see their forefathers. We're going to go through a history lesson like you've never seen. Not going to be long on a couple of the points, but what I want you to capture is the truth about history, how we were excised out. Some of the information might even be surprising to you that you're not aware of, but I'm really disheartened that a lot of our youth are not here to hear this because this is a history that comes from their forefathers, their foreparents, not just in the United States of America, but around the world. All right? So, and also, what I have are two things. For those of you who would like, as a preservation of history, one of my colleagues, I call him Dr. David Johnson, does Martin Luther King speeches in the voice of Martin Luther King. He has them on CD, and they're also available on DVD. All right, now I know what some of you are asking, what does it cost? I'm giving these away for free, one or the other, and I'll tell you why. Because the preservation of culture and history sometimes has no cost or price. And so those of you here this afternoon, if you want a CD or a DVD, here's what you have to promise me, that you will get this into the hands of a youth so that they can hear the speech. They can learn about why Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream, what that dream was. And so that a piece of black history, American history, world history, God's history could be preserved in their mind. Now, the other thing is, I know some of you know I have a diet weight loss program out. Let me show you the blessing of that. Who knows what this is? What's that? This is a gift card. This is for an Apple product, and I have gift cards for an Android product. What am I doing with these gift cards? Ladies and gentlemen, I have a sponsor that is willing to give away the app that was created through some of my research for free. And here's what they're proposing. That with the gift card, you download the app, you get a $10 credit on your iPhone or Apple phone. It costs $4 in the Apple store. I think it's $6 in the Android store, but you don't pay for it. The gift card pays for it, and you get $4 or $6 extra to buy whatever you want in the store. The only thing is I have to make sure you download it on your phone using it, because when they started just giving people the gift cards, they were doing all sorts of downloading some very interesting things. But we can deal with that after the lecture. But I just wanted to let you know. Okay? Yes. I've explained it before. What it is, it's that it's based upon, if you are interested in getting it for free on your phone, I will email you the instructions, the diet, the exercise guide, but it groups your dieting choices based upon the flavors you like. Just helping. Okay, it tells you which white bread is the best one for your metabolism. If you like spaghetti, if you like pizza, if you like the flavors strawberry, vanilla. In other words, it's not taking away the foods you like to eat, it's giving you better choices. All right? All from your phone. All right, so let's say a word of prayer, and then we'll get started on this afternoon's lecture. And I don't want to keep you too long, because it could be a lot to digest, but it's really interesting information. Dear Father, as we're about to go to your word, and also the secular word, we pray that we may use what you have revealed in history to let us know how great thou art, and that you have put a great people on this earth to finish your work. In Jesus' holy name I pray. Amen. So what we're discussing this afternoon, is what is a true African presence, not just in America, but it's been around the world. The first thing that now let me see this. It was a second ago. Please stand by. I guess the devil does go to church, even in the afternoon, even though some of the saints don't show up. All right. Oh, there is that. Is that it? Okay. No. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, you may recognize what we're studying this quarter, which was that statue that Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of, where the first kingdom was Babylon and the last kingdom was the Roman Empire. What a lot of people don't realize is that this was actually a display of the transfer of knowledge from Africa to the rest of the world. Here's what I mean. In the Bible, it tells us that one of the things that fascinated Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians was the acquisition of knowledge, because knowledge gives you your inventions. Your inventions give you quality of life. Your quality of life gives you survival. So the king was very interested in knowledge. But here's what a lot of people don't realize, that when you look at the Babylonian Empire, right now where you see Egypt, Africa, going all into what we currently call Europe, was actually the Babylonian Empire. Now, if you remember, the Bible said that each empire would grow weaker in its power, but it basically remained the same geographical group. And what I want you to understand is that the majority of the knowledge that was shared within the Babylonian Empire actually came from Africa. What you're looking at is now what is called Rome in AD 117, but the geography of the great Babylonian Empire never changed, and the majority of that knowledge, there we go, okay. The majority of that knowledge came from Africa. Now, here's another thing you need to understand. The Middle East did not exist until the United Nations and the truth about history was discovered. The Middle East is a phony term. Egypt, Israel, Syria, Libya are all African countries. if you look up the word Middle East, you will see there is no defined definition for it. Why did that change? Because for a long time, there was a belief that civilization started in Europe, but then a skeleton named Lucy was found in Ethiopia, which disproved the lie of the myth that civilization began in Europe. But you didn't even need to look there. When the Bible talks about the Garden of Eden, the rivers of Havilah, if you look down here in East Africa, that was Ethiopia. And from Ethiopia, when you go up to Egypt, across to Libya, Algeria, and then into what is actually Africa called the Middle East, the birth of civilization, the transfer of knowledge that was spread throughout the Babylonian Empire into the Roman Empire was all the African presence in the world. Some people don't understand that Africa is not a country. It's a continent. You ready for this fact? You can fit 6 United States of America into one Africa. Did you know that? It's a huge continent. So how in the world did we get to the place where Columbus discovered America, but could it have been that the Africans came before Columbus? The archaeological record shows, you will not find this on Google. The archaeological record shows that the Africans, the Asians, and the Native Americans were already in an area of the United States of America we call New England, based upon the archaeological record. Now, I know you can't see this from the pointer because it doesn't show up on the screen, but the image off to my left, that's the Native American. The image in the middle is the Asian American, and the middle to your right is your African American. It is an archaeological find called the ofrendum. The ofrendum comes from a Latin word which means celebration of friendship. The archaeological record showed that the Native American, through communications, organized a birthday party for the Asian American, which is in the middle, and they also invited the African to come to America. When this archaeological find was first discovered, they tried to say that no, Africans were not in America, that the figure that you see way over to your right was an Asian because Asians braid their hair. True and false. If you look at an Asian that braids their hair, they have one long braid down their back. But an African is the only one that can braid, cornrow, all of their hair. This showed, this archaeological finding, that in the area of the United States called New England, you know that's why it's called that, because the historical record was changed to try to show that Christopher Columbus discovered America and then the Pilgrims came over and nobody else existed there, when the archaeological record shows that the Africans were already visiting an area of America called New England, where the Native American was already there and the Asian American was already there. So the African presence was in Africa, it was also in America, but it was also in Mexico. This is an archaeological find on my left of a Mandingo head that was found in Mexico, and on the right is another Mandingo head. Ladies and gentlemen, those statues were found in an area of Mexico called Oaxaca. Now, anybody who's Jamaican is getting excited because they're wondering, what's the Jamaican flag doing surrounding all of Mexico? Well, folks, if you look at, I know it's hard without this pointer, if you look at the arrow that I have on the slide, if you follow that arrow backwards, there is a straight shot from Jamaica to an area of Veracruz in Mexico and then into Oaxaca. Why is that important? And I actually had some personal experience with this. The Oaxacanians, if you ever cross the border and see the short, dark-skinned Mexican people, those are the people that come from Oaxaca. And I know some of you have probably faced a little prejudice, racism, from Mexican Americans. Now here's what's interesting about that. People of color who look African are worshiped in Oaxaca because the Oaxacanians, those short people, the reason why the indigenous culture has been preserved in Mexico, the reason why they worship black people, they see black people and today they still bow down, was because the Oaxacanians believed the Jamaicans that came to Mexico and helped fend off the Spaniard invasions, which is why the native culture was preserved in Oaxaca, they felt they were gods. Not only did they feel they were gods, but they actually created statues of what they saw as giant black men coming to defend their territory in Mexico. This is an archaeological find of one of those heads. And I don't know if you can see that nose. That don't look like no Mexican nose to me. The Oaxacanians in Mexico felt that black people were gods because they did not rob their land, they did not pillage their land, they showed them how to farm their land, and they protected them against the Spanish invaders. Here is another archaeological find from the Oaxacanian Veracruz, Mexico. Once again, look at the nose and look at the cheeks. This looks like Brother McWilliams, Mike McWilliams. Don't y'all think? Doesn't it kind of look like him? Big, strong brother. This was what and in Veracruz, Mexico, just so that people would never be confused, there is a statue of a black man called El Yanga. His name was Gaspar Yanga. He is the Martin Luther King of Mexico, because this Maroon, as they called him, sounds like Marine, helped the native people fight off the invasion from the Spaniards to the point where they erected a statue of him, and his nickname was El Yanga. He was a Western African that came from the other side of Mexico. They were first initially tried to be enslaved by the Spaniards, but they fought for freedom and they preserved the culture in Oaxaca, Mexico. And that's why today, if you take a trip to Oaxaca, Mexico, the indigenous culture has still survived because the Jamaican Africans and the Africans sailed, intermarried, intermixed, and protected the Central South Mexicans. And if you don't believe that, agua de Jamaica. How many of you speak Spanish? What is Jamaican water doing in Mexico? The Jamaicans also brought their food and culture to Central America. And if there's any Mexican that doubts of the African presence in Veracruz and Oaxaca and the protection and the history and the archaeological record, we have nothing to do with those colored people. If they doubt anything I'm saying, explain this to me. Why are you drinking water from Jamaica? If you look at the first couple of pictures of what was representative of people in South Mexico, I know you could look at the brother on the left and tell that's not Photoshop. The first black and white pictures of people that were captured in southern Mexico also displayed the African presence in Mexico. And here's the other question. Did you ever think about it? How in the world did pyramids in Egypt end up having the same structure, the same complexity of the pyramids found in southern Mexico? It's because, once again, the African knowledge, the African protection, the African presence in the world is found in the archaeological record. Not only, so as you can see, the archaeological record shows us that the Africans were not just stuck to the African continent. Africans were found in New England, in the American continent. They were found in southern Mexico, in the Mexican continent. The African presence was found all throughout the world. So why the history books do not mention it, I'm not sure. The other thing is the African presence is boldly displayed in the Bible. There was a guy named Solomon. Y'all remember him? Wisest man in the world. Had 1,000 women. Y'all remember that? But there was one woman that caught his eye. And do y'all know who she was? The Queen of Sheba. Where did the Queen of Sheba come from? She came from Ethiopia, the foundation of civilization. Solomon was looking at all these mixed women. And then came an Ethiopian. And here is what the biblical record shows. 1 Kings 10, verse 6. She said to the king, the report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half what was told to me. In wisdom and wealth, you have far exceeded the report I heard. How happy your people must be. How happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Y'all think she was just giving this man a lot of compliments. She started to fall in love. Y'all heard that when a man loves a woman, this is when a woman loved a man. And then Solomon responded. King Solomon gave the king of Sheba all she desired. Help me, Jesus. Besides, now here's the key. Now, I'm not being nasty. I'm just trying to show y'all something. Gave her all she desired. That's feelings. Besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she left and returned with her retinue to her own country. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we found out 225 years later what Queen Sheba and King Solomon shared. 225 years later, the son of that union between Queen of Sheba and King Solomon was evidenced, the 225th ruler, of Ethiopia was evidenced in a man called Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie who is considered the god of the Rastafarian religion. In other words, the blood of the Jew was crossed once again with the blood of the African, manifested in the Ethiopian, and this is why today the Ethiopians claim they're the true ones that are pure-blooded Jews. Now let me explain, I'm going to try to keep this wrapped up and short, but I want to show you how powerful the African influence is. A lot of people don't realize that and this is why maybe some of you were confused about what I said about blacks enslaving blacks. That's what Exodus really showed us. What you know as Israel and the Middle East today was actually a UN decision. The Israelites that you see in Israel today are actually Europeans that were European Jews. After the Holocaust, while the Holocaust was going on, the United Nations had to come up with a solution to stop Hitler from killing these people. And so they created a space called Israel and moved all that they thought and suspected were Jews to what is now known as Israel. And this is why, and I'm not, angling politics or giving you my opinion, this is why the Palestinians, who are really African people, that were transported and moved from Africa up in through Egypt into the zone that the UN called the Middle East are asking who was here first. You were invited to invade our land when we've been living here all along. Now, I don't know how they're going to settle it, but I wanted to show you that the African blood made it into what was known as the Jewish blood at that time, and it was manifested once again in Ethiopia, showing once again the African presence all around the world. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to tell you is, here's why racism and prejudice is so stupid to me. We are all third cousins. And the reason why I say we're all third cousins, let me show you how good God is. If you marry your first cousin, your children will have genetic defects. If you marry your second cousin, the risk of genetic defects decreases to about 20%. But if you marry a third cousin, the risk of genetic defects in children is literally 0%. And this is why we are all third cousins, but God made it this way so that we could understand we're really all family. It's not about who stayed in the oven longer. Y'all heard some of them foolish things we tell our kids. I even hear them in clinic. They que, Mamá, ¿por qué el doctor está negro? and the parent telling the kid, and they're telling them in Spanish, because God left him a little longer in the oven. And that's when I got to rise up and tell the kid, no, it's not so. It's just that you don't know I'm your uncle, but from another mother. No, I do. I am playing clinic. I ain't letting people get away with that nonsense that I was left in the oven longer. We're all third cousins. So the African presence was not just in Africa, it was all around the world. The African presence was in medicine. Imhotep was considered the father of modern medicine. Now, I want to show you the guy only lived to be about 50 years of age, but Imhotep was the one who, this is where we have the development of experimentation. But what do the history books tell us? You know, even though we look at Imhotep, and this is a recreation from what the hieroglyphic shows us that he looks like, doesn't he look more like Leroy instead of Tom? Right? You know, he looked like a brother. But somehow Hippocrates, hypocrite, is considered the father of medicine. Here's why. Because they say Hippocrates invented aspirin. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not true. The pharmaceutical record begins at 1830, stops at 1910, where the United States upheld a patent from 1908 that stated aspirin was discovered by a European called Hippocrates. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the true history of aspirin. In ancient Egypt and Greece, they found that when you took the dried leaves of myrtle, bark of willow, and poplar tree and consumed it, it made your blood thin, it made your blood flow, it prevented your risk of heart disease, strokes, and peripheral artery disease. But this was discovered by Imhotep, and it was stolen by the Greeks, and Hippocrates got the credit. But not only that, folks, the Africans not only gave us aspirin, they actually gave us the right way for a woman to have a baby. In the hieroglyphic records and in the archaeological records, what we have discovered is the Africans use a birthing stool. Now, I need to tell you a little bit about medicine so that you understand this. The womb and where your stool comes out are literally similar organs in this sense. When a woman is pregnant, you notice her belly expands, right? What happens is the womb has receptors that when that belly expands to a certain point, it begins contractions. When you have a bowel movement, it's the same thing. When something, lunch, expands, you have a contraction. The Africans understood this simple scientific concept. And so they realized it was better for a woman to be in a seated and stooped position to have a baby. And the infant mortality rate when you used a birthing stool for the African, this is why, remember what Pharaoh said, that when you see those women giving birth, kill the babies, and the midwife said, hey, these Israelite women are not like the Egyptian women. They go into labor and they're popping out babies like popcorn. Why? Because the Africans used a birthing stool to have their babies. Now, the record also showed us that Falcon in 1879, when he visited what were known as primitive midwives, they had a modification of the birthing stool where the woman, instead of stooping down, she laid with the bed slanted. But it was from the same concept of the Africans. And from the Africans, we get the famous C-section procedure. Here's what blew me away. When C-section procedures started being performed for women to have babies, they were talking like some American surgeon, European surgeon invented it. Ladies and gentlemen, Falcon and Edinburgh, when they visited the African midwives to understand how is it that the Africans in Uganda could have babies with such low infant mortality rate, this is where they discovered that they were using a technique called a C-section, which over time was transmitted and passed down and adopted by Europeans to say it was their procedure when it really came from Africa. At that time, the Europeans were still having women have birth on a regular bed, and the infant mortality rate was still about 25% in the United States until they learned that technique from the Africans. Also, the Africans were the first to deal with how do you remove a cataract from a person's eye. Here's what's interesting about these two sets of hieroglyphics that you see. People claim that the archaeologists that found this record showing that the Africans were the first to experiment with removing cataracts painted the picture to look like black people. Why would a white archaeologist do that? And then, when they showed them the actual archaeological record, then they said, no, okay, we see what happened. When you dusted off the record, the dust stayed on the people to make them look black. Here's what's stupid about that argument. How come their shorts are still white? They just did not want to accept the fact that the Africans were the first to successfully remove cataracts from people's eyes back in primitive Egypt. And now I want to go through, and I see some of your eyes getting heavy. I want to go through the African presence in inventions not only around the world, not only in Africa, but now in the United States of America. And here is the interesting thing. This is connected to Scripture, where knowledge would increase, men would run to and fro. 1844, the Great Disappointment. And when Ellen White, in her book, The Southern Work, and also in all of her writings, talked about the explosion of knowledge that would come to the United States of America, indicating that we are in the last phase of Earth's history, she was referring to the genius of the Africans in America. Something that some of us don't even know, and definitely what our kids are not aware of. And all of this is documented history in the United States Patent Office. Some of the patents, though, have been hidden. And I have copies of them, and I'm going to reveal them to you. And here's really why I wanted the young people to be there. Me and Pastor, we're always looking at what each other's wearing. Because, he dresses well. I see his wife shaking her head. Because she probably wants me to help him out a little bit with his wardrobe. Or she wants him to help me out a little bit with my wardrobe. But Pastor, don't we always talk about, hey, that's a nice tie, that's a nice suit, those are nice shoes. Look, if your brain is worth $1 million, you better make sure the packaging says that to the world and stop looking like some clown or fool. This is 1800s. Look at how A. Miles is dressed. And I'm bringing this out for a reason. The U.S. Patent Office records that A. Miles was the African-American inventor in the early 1800s who invented the elevator. There's the patent right there. Once again, look at how G.W. Kelly is dressed. And I'm bringing this out for a reason, because some of what we've been gamed and fooled into believing is a fashion statement that denies our intelligence. Who's going to take you seriously when you look like a clown? But people are more prone to believe that when you look like this, you really invented this. G.W. Kelly was the one that invented, every time you go to a dry cleaner, you will notice they have a steam cleaning machine. G.W. Kelly was the one that invented that. Now, what I'm showing you is, in the U.S. Patent Office, they don't put a picture of the inventor next to the invention, but I did. Because I want to make sure you know who invented these things. Oops. We have oh, there we go. Look at how John Pickering is dressed. This is the 1800s, folks. Who is John Pickering? Let me tell you who he is. Who were you told in school invented flight? Flight. The Wright brothers, right? How come all of you, some of you way up into your 90s, can still remember that? But why didn't they tell you who invented the Goodyear blimp? You're looking at him. John Pickering. His story was interesting. John Pickering was the first generation freed man, went through slavery, and was the inventor of what we know today as the Goodyear blimp. How come they didn't teach you that in school? This is why I wanted our kids to see this. To know that you're being taught a selective education that does not let you know. You want to say, I have genes in me? I'll accept what you say. But when you look at the whole record, I've got some genes of the previous African kings and queens that are founders and inventors of this world. And, you know, before I end, I'm going to show you what happened and what they do to systematically try to convince us we're stupid. It's a pre-planned job, hit job. I'll show you real quick before we go today. Another one, oh man, this one really blows me away. Who won World War I? You're living in the country that, why do you have freedoms today? Who won World War II? United States of America. How come they didn't tell you that somebody invented an anti-aircraft gun which helped the United States win World War I and World War II? Why didn't they tell you that? Because you're looking at the inventor. I had to dig real hard to find a copy of the newspaper article that talked about Robert Blair, a Negro inventor of the anti-aircraft gun. The United States of America owes its victories, World War I, World War II, to an African American. Do your kids know that? What do they show you on the news? Y'all ain't building up America. You're destroying it. Our kids need to know that it's because of your grandfather, Robert Blair, who invented the anti-aircraft gun. This is why we won those wars. Hang with me, folks. This guy is called the Black Edison. Granville T. Woods. How many of you text message? How many of you text message? All right? Say thank you. Say it louder. Say it again. Okay, now say thank you to him. Yo, what I'm trying to show y'all is you are text messaging today because of this man's invention. Look at him. Young people, if you're here, look at the way he's dressed. Nice haircut, smooth mustache, nice suit and tie. The reason why I'm bringing this up is fashion dictates your perception on life. Suppose I came in here with a blue suit that said Chino Youth Facility, and I had a number on my, you'd be what somebody called the cops, somebody, escaped from probation. I'm trying to get our youth to understand that, dressing, when you're dealing with corporate America, you're already at a challenge. But this is who you really are. Text messaging because of him. Let me rush on. These are some of the lists of the inventions, but I want you to look at the right and bottom, the third column, all at the bottom, Granville T. Woods. Something like 200 inventions. But I wanted to show you just a couple of quick ones. The air brake in your cars today, Granville T. Woods. The roller coaster. So, that crazy stuff that some of you adrenaline junkies like? Granville T. Woods. The galvanic battery. That's called Energizer. You ever ask who invented the battery? Somebody had to invent it. Say thank you. Granville T. Woods. Look at this. The electric cutoff switch. You know what that is? Any of you ever get off on 8th Street where the trolley comes by? And those gates come down? The electric cutoff switch allows the gates to come down and the electricity to run but be cut off for a short time on that track just in case any of y'all try to beat the trolley. You know who put that safety mechanism in? What was his name? Say thank you for saving my life on 8th Street. Let me run through this real quick. But ladies and gentlemen, here's some pictures of some other things. Y'all didn't even know ice cream. You ever ask where ice cream come from? These are all inventions. The fire extinguisher, the elevator, the guitar, and the one that all of us like, the straightening comb. Say thank you. No, this one was by Madam C.J. Walker. All right, let me go through some of these quick. So, let me skip him. Well, actually, let me just mention him real quick. This is Samuel J. Lowry. Samuel J. Lowry was the first U.S. Supreme Court justice to enter the Tennessee Supreme Court. Samuel J. Lowry had two interesting daughters. The daughters noticed that after slavery, a lot of black women were actually selling themselves to make money. So the daughters looked at some silkworms, and they noticed that the silkworms produced a type of thread. So the daughters learned how to take the silkworms, produce thread, and sew clothing, and the daughters started a mission to rescue the black women that did not have any job skills, did not have any money, to learn how to sew clothing and sell it so that they would not have to sell themselves. Samuel J. African American. Did you know that? Did they teach you this in school? Don't you feel proud to know that this type of history is running in your bones? Say thank you. Dr. Claudia Thomas, Oh my, if you don't know about her story, it's really quite impressive. I actually had a friend who had she wanted to do orthopedic surgery. She's about number 2 in the class. Bright girl, but strange anyway. But she was really petite. She weighed all of 96 pounds. When she got to ortho, the problem that they had was not her grade. She couldn't lift the instruments. She couldn't use the instruments. So she was frustrated and went into some other field of medicine. Claudia Thomas was the first woman and woman of color to graduate from an orthopedic training program from Yale University. Were you taught this in school? You mean you didn't know this? Say thank you, Dr. Thomas. Every woman should know you're only limited and bound by the limits you put on yourself. Dr. Thomas shows us that even against the odds, she graduated from Yale and Johns Hopkins University in orthopedics, a field dominated by men. Dr. Charles Drew, I'll just mention him real quick. I actually trained at his hospital. Dr. Charles Drew, have any of you ever heard of the blood bank? Huh? Have any of you ever given blood? Do you know who invented blood transfusions? You knew before you came in today who invented blood transfusions. Did you know that? Did you know who invented the blood bank? Who was it? All right, you cheating, cause yeah, I know. I told you at lunchtime. Brother Chuck knows I'm just messing with him. You know, I got to get him riled up so he gets the blood flowing. You know, so he can. No, but folks, I want you to know that it was a black doctor named Charles Drew invented blood banking, and Brother Chuck did know before I mentioned it. But here's the sad thing about his story. Charles Drew ended up in a car accident, and he was about 5 miles, I think it was 5 miles, I may be wrong, away from what was called the Colored People's Hospital. So, the White People's Hospital, this was during Jim Crow, was right up the street. He didn't make it in time to the Colored People's Hospital to be saved by his own invention. And so he died. Sad, but true. But folks, you know, it was him who revolutionized blood banking. And then I'm just going to mention this one, and then I'll tell you about what happened to us real quickly, and we're done. Thank you for staying awake. We're 10 minutes to 5, and I think we're doing okay. You guys ever heard of George Carruthers? How many of you heard of George Carruthers? Okay, who is he? What's that? What's that? Not a newsman. George Carruthers. How many of you knew that we went to the moon? Right? You know, we landed on the moon and it was a big announcement, but they never told you the black scientist who headed up the team to get us to the moon. His name was George Carruthers. As a matter of fact, here is George. If y'all don't believe me, this is him when he was a young man as he was designing the spaceship that would help us lead the world in space exploration. Why didn't they teach you this in school? And here is why I was really upset about somebody who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Here's why. George Carruthers, who paved the way for all Americans to arrive at the moon, is a Presidential Medal recipient. What does the fool who just got the medal have to do with opening up anything scientific for all Americans? This is the caliber of person. And you know what's sad? It took a black president in the United States of America to give an elder, aging scientist that opened up the way for us to explore space for people to even know who he was. Let me let me show you this guy, and then we'll go to the last part. This guy, we called him Gabe, Dr. Heneka. He was one of my classmates. Gabe was a humble but brilliant Ethiopian. Now, here's why I'm highlighting Gabe. He understood the history of the Queen of Sheba and the King of Solomon. He's a direct descendant of them. Gabe, he was actually my surgery attending, applied to Loma Linda University where he graduated from. And it was interesting because we would have conversations where he was accused of cheating, I was accused of cheating, and the only reason why we were accused of cheating was he was always quiet in class and had good grades, where I was always missing in class. No, seriously, I ain't even two opposite personalities. So when he applied to Loma Linda University trauma surgery residency, they rejected him. So he went to Charles Drew University, did the trauma surgery residency there, and was such a skilled trauma surgeon. If you're in trauma, you want this man operating on you. He had such a success rate that National Geographic, Google him, called him up and said, Dr. Heneka, we want to do a special on you about how good you are as a trauma surgeon and that you opened up your own hospital in a poor section of Ethiopia where every patient for 5 years has gotten a bill that says no charge. But let me tell you, and this, man, I'm telling you, I'm glad God is going to change us, because if he lets me talk when we get to heaven, there are some people that I remember at Loma Linda that held positions that I'm going to let them have it. He's still working on me. Here's the end of the story. It took him to be recognized by National Geographic for Loma Linda to give him a call. And he told me the day he got the call. And he said, Colin, I know you're a man, you think outside the box, and I know you would give me some good guidance on this, but my gut feeling is telling me that now that they want me to go back, now that they want me on faculty, after they rejected me to join their trauma surgery residency, what should I tell them? No. I ain't playing. God is still working on me. Some of the old Colin Ross that got into schoolyard fights and pulled little girls' hairs and messed with people in church, and people were saying that the Lord needs enough grace for this boy who's a devil. He comes out every once in a while. So Gabe told him no. He refused to join the faculty at Loma Linda because it took him National Geographic to recognize him before the university would even ask him. The university that rejected him. And here's what I learned from his story, and what I want the kids to learn from mine. Never give up. Never let anybody deter you from the dream that God has for you, that you may take a side road, a detour. It may not look like he's getting you to the place that he wants you to be, but even if you go to his supposed anointed university of the minor prophets, when God wants you to get somewhere, you might be tattered, you might be scorned, you might have an attitude, they may have treated you bad, but when you get there, you're going to be like me. I love it when they beg me for money from Loma Linda University. I send them back a check that says, this check comes from the office of Colin Ross, MD, PhD, MPH, and I always write them the same amount of money on the check, void. I ain't lying. I ain't playing. They stopped sending me those letters asking for money because I could see they get real excited seeing all those letters behind my name. I even sometimes put a little perfume on the letter for them to think, oh yeah, it must be a big donor. And they open up the check and it says, void. I ain't playing. He's still working on me. All right, let me end with this. Okay. Can y'all hang on just for 5 minutes? Just for 5 minutes? I got to tell you about this guy, Joshua Ned. And this is what I talk about, physical trauma passed on down from... Joshua Ned is actually my great-great-great-great-grandfather. He was the first black man to go to medical school at the University of Alberta. We actually found out through Ancestry.com, and I called up the university. Here's the funny thing about this. When I strayed from Loma Linda, you got to pay your dues, I had to go through Canada to actually get licensed. And the university that helped me was the University of Alberta. So one day I called them and I said, I'm looking for somebody that might have been my ancestor that went to your school. And they said, what's the name? Joshua Ned. And in 2 seconds they said, you're a descendant of Joshua Ned? I said, yeah. They said, we have his yearbook picture. We can send it to you, but more importantly, we want to tell you. This is how I knew he was my grandfather. He said, if there was ever a student who would cut class, make up jokes about the professors, but graduate and insult you with a smile on his face, it was your great-grandfather, Joshua Ned. This is my great-grandfather, and this guy here, Dwayne Hamilton. He's actually my cousin. Dwayne went up against the Supreme Court. Dwayne does immigrations for Kenyans, and he won a case against the Supreme Court, so other lawyers cite his case in the case of Hamilton versus da-da-da-da-da. And what I'm trying to show you folks is the genetic programming, if people want to go there, it's in us. It's just that you got to know it and believe it and then act on it. And I'm just going to end with this. Let me come to this last point. So what basically happened to us? Let me skip that. I thought this was a cute picture. Okay, so I'm going to end with this. What happened to us? How is it that during the 1800s, we made all these inventions, contributed to American society, but yet today we're basically second-class citizens? If you look at criminal justice, incarceration rates, dropout rates, what happened? Other people in the United States of America received a head start. Y'all remember that big Statue of Liberty in New York? Give me your tithe, you're poor, etc. That was a message that went to Europe. Here's what's interesting. The Europeans were allowed to send their poor, their tired, their unskilled, who were welcomed at Ellis Island. But when in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the United States went to other countries, they robbed those countries of their skilled laborers. The doctors, the engineers, the lawyers, the pharmacists, the nurses. You didn't get a visa unless you were a professional. So let me show you what happened. I think this is important for us to understand because we need to squash this. I'm African and you're American saying you're African. You're West Indian because I don't understand, save for an accent, we're the same people. But now this is for the family. Here's what some of you say. Those West Indian people, they taking up all the jobs. Those African people, they so secluded. And I'm gonna tell you what happened so we can settle that. But you also need to know about the Homestead Act. So what the United States did was they took all the professionals from those countries. And so it left those other countries a void of professionals, and it allowed people that could come here from Jamaica who would have been successful in Jamaica, the United States of America, or Canada. I want you to follow what I'm saying. In other words, a visual image was created that these foreign blacks Come here. This is what the Caucasians were throwing as a poison pill. And they do well. What happened to all you black people living in the projects? And a lot of foreign blacks bought that lie. I was at Loma Linda University. I was giving it to the professors, the university, Dr. Lynn Barons, whoever was in biting distance, and my own black people. When they elected me, you know, I know how to be political. I ran for office. They said, man, we could make this guy Colin Ross the Black Health Professional Student Organization president. He's so calm and his arguments are so articulate. He's going to be president and make everything just wonderful for us black people here at the university. Little did they know I was going to take this issue head on. So I called them all in a room and I let them know a little bit of history. That while we who are foreign blacks, our parents came here second and third generation educated. Your black American brother here who was locked out of universities, locked out of the banking system, locked out of any system of advancement, put in separate schools, was marching, protesting, asking for equal rights, so that when your black behind got here, it wouldn't be as difficult for you and you wouldn't be treated like how they were being treated living here all along. And I told all the black students assembled under the first speech, here's my bottom line. We're in the same ship together. Some of you have accents. Some of you are Africans. Some of you want to study in your little groups. Some of you think you're... And you know what? As long as I'm president, that you have one or two choices. You jump off the ship or you in this ship. But we're going to all make it to the promised land. Get up, all of you, I said, and give someone who speaks with an accent or speaks perfect English a hug and tell them you're sorry for some of the things you said about their forefathers. Man, those students looked at me and said, you know, I won't name his name. Guys, I think we made the wrong choice. I think we're going to have some problems with this one. These are black people. They're saying this. So I want you to understand, black, wherever you're from, there's a different history where we should have been helping each other instead of believing the lie about each other. Black Americans are not lazy. Now I'm letting y'all in on the family talk. When I came to this country, our family lived in Section 8 housing. I know what Section 8 is. I'm not fazed by seeing prostitutes walk around here. I would say hi to some of them as I went to school in the morning. We grew up in Section 8. We know what it's like to go to segregated school. But my mama taught me that all men are created equal. And God loves all people. And don't you ever think you're better than those black kids you go to school with who fight with you every day, who ask you where you from, you know, ask you why you wear the same clothes 3 days of the week. That we're going to do one or two things, son. You're going to rise above this. You're going to get above this. It's going to make you tougher. But you come back and help those that try to hurt you. And that's the message to all of us. And we'll close with this. Here's the other reason why they were set back. It was a horrible act. Man, these politicians amaze me when they talk about who's on welfare. The United States of America exercised the biggest welfare program on earth called the Homestead Act. Let me just go to this slide, right here. Ladies and gentlemen, when the Europeans started coming to the United States, what you see in light blue was considered the United States. What you see in dark blue was all uninhabited. So those people that came over around the time of the Statue of Liberty, get this now, they could claim 160 acres of land for a whopping $10. Free from the government. Now, maybe that land doesn't mean much to you, but let's say some of them turn those lands into apartment complexes, factories. Could you imagine what you could do if you didn't have to pay for the land that you built your house on? And you got 160 acres for $10. The equivalent of 1,000. Imagine if you could put, Brother Chuck, I know you're a businessman, $1,000 down anywhere in San Diego, except where I live, and get 160 acres of property. You have automatically moved from poor to rich. The one thing you cannot invent on this earth is land. So some of these people in the South, look up on the map. Some of these people in red America, the central states, got the biggest welfare check from the United States government that helped their family from generation after generation to mount businesses, to buy property, to sell their products rent-free for $10. And that's why the disparity in America today is so difficult to catch up on. Because some of those families, Koch brothers, those hypocrites amaze me. The Koch brothers inherited a fortune from their father that they just had to let the businesses run. And they're in the United States, and the last point, and we're done. In the United States, there are 110 families who own 99% of the wealth. I'm sorry, 110 families who own about 90% of the wealth in the United States of America because of a welfare check. So who are they to talk about poor people now trying to make it out the ghetto when they didn't homes? Look it up. So folks, as I close, our kids need to understand this. They need to form partnerships with each other. Please don't tell your kids when foreigners move into your neighborhood, especially if they're African, West Indian, or something like that. Oh, these are bad people. And you who are foreigners, please have your kids intermingle, integrate, and also assimilate with their black brothers and sisters who were in this country fighting for your civil rights so that you wouldn't have it as hard as they did. In other words, let's try to make this a little bit better hell until Jesus comes, where we won't have to worry about where we came from anymore. Okay? God bless you. I hope you learned something with the presentation. And as I end, remember, if you want one of the CDs or DVDs free, I will give it to you, but you got to promise me that you'll put it into the hands of a young person so that they can learn about the Martin Luther King speeches. I'll also have the gift cards. If you want to see, we could put it on your phone real quick, and then you can buy whatever you want in the Apple Store with the other credit. I don't know if Pastor wanted to say something before we, yeah. No? Okay. So what I'll do is let me pray and close, so if anybody feels they want to leave, they can. And, we can answer some questions, and then I'll do the gift giveaways, okay? Is that fair? All righty. Dear Father, we're thankful that through the Word and through history, you've given us a glimpse into what a great God you are. We pray, Lord, that some of us will have more heart, care, and concern for those of all our brothers and sisters who have not been blessed with the knowledge, the wealth, the compassion that you have given us in this church. Help us to have open arms, not rolled up fists, as we deal with fallen humanity. And let us know that through our history you have taught us, you have given us the brilliance just to elevate mankind that could be suffering overlooked. Be with us throughout the rest of the Sabbath hours in the week. In Jesus' holy name I pray, amen. So if you feel you want to leave, you can. If anybody has any questions, I'll answer any questions real quick or any points, and then we'll do the giveaways. Yes? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, excellent. Great. Amen. Anybody else? Questions? No? Oh, no, she was making a statement that her son did not get accepted to Loma Linda, so he went to University of Washington, and he has his own private practice now. So where there's a will, there's a way. You don't have to go to Loma Linda to get a medical degree, you know. So you just go where God opens up the door for you. Any other questions, comments? No? Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, you know, what Pastor's saying is that, the other pastor, not our pastor, is that, you know, God can take you from nothing and make you quite something. And you know what? A lot of times those are the best people to work for God. I think my personality is balanced because I grew up, you know, I know what Section 8 is. My mother took advantage of that to help us to move on up. I remember the first time I ran into a prostitute in our neighborhood. I'm saying hi to this lady, and Mama, I said, Mom, I met this wonderful lady in the neighborhood. But, you know, she was half naked. She goes, boy, what you talking? And she explained to me what a prostitute was. I didn't know. But what I'm saying is, you know, when you have those type of experiences, what I never forgot was this was fallen humanity. God sent me to be an avenue in the salvation of someone like her, you know. Yeah, you can get a lot of street knowledge, which is survival knowledge, too. Any other questions, comments? No? Yeah? Oh, yes.
There are a number of other blacks that invent things all over the United States that haven't gotten recognition for them.
Mm-hmm.
But in some classes I've had, I learned about it. Well, I learned about the one you were talking about, but I learned about some others too. And a lot on the railroad tracks, blacks have a lot to do with things that makes the railroad tracks run the way they do.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right, Brother Chuck. And here's my point of contention, is that this is not being taught in school, and actually schools are cutting out history programs. Even I think it was one of the major universities had a debate about African studies. You know, do we need it? I think it was San Diego State. I remember that controversy a long time ago. Here's the bottom line. Do not do the same thing the oppressor during one time did, which is use that type of information to put people in a second-class place. The only reason why I share this knowledge is a lot of us and a lot of our kids suffer from low self-esteem. They do not try attempt because they believe they're going to fail. They do not try or attempt because standardized testing, and that's another presentation I could do for you, to show you how standardized testing is systematically designed to put people into first class, second class, and third class. It is not a test of knowledge. How do I know? 1% of all standardized test writers are people of color. In that 1%, they put Asian, black. In other words, 99% of every standardized test you take today was written by a male Caucasian. There's a reason for that. So it's primarily to have our kids know if God wants you to be there, even our adults, he'll get you there. Because if these people did it under the conditions they did, it had to be God. Okay? All righty. So if you, Oh, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Sure. No, these folks. I can give you any slide from this presentation you want, either by email. You have email, Sister Brown? You know what email is? Oh. I love this lady so much. We're always kidding, She makes me laugh till I have an asthma attack. But anybody wants anything just email me, and I'll send it to you or any form, and I could send it to you. But I'll charge you $5.99 just because you got a lot of money. You're one of those ladies I was talking about in the morning. I still got some medical school loans that you can help me with. Anybody, I'll send it to you. I think I have your email. Yeah, I'll send it to you. Just let me know which ones you want. Okay. So no, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Well, let me make a couple of quick points. Number one, depending upon the profession, in the medical profession, mm-hmm. Okay. So here's what I'm going to give you quick general comments so that I think there's a lot of people that have that same concern too. If you're going into the medical profession, there are loan repayment programs. The National Health Service Corps, folks, use me as a resource. If any of your kids are going into science, every year there's about $25 million that goes unclaimed because our kids don't know about it, because they don't ask. I have a nonprofit that gives away scholarships. We just gave away $50,000 collectively, more than the Oakwood Alumni Association. Now, I ain't picking on Oakwood alumni, but I told those people, if you want to know how to get money to give away from your talk to me. You know what they said? Did you go to Oakwood? No, they walked away. I'm serious. I could show those people I'm doing it all by myself, how they could get more money for their kids. That's another talk for another day. But if she's going into, any kid that's going into a science profession, the California Medical Board, the National Health Service Corps, et cetera, have loan repayment programs. If she's going into a natural science, biology, et cetera, here's my advice. Do the first 2 years at a community college. The reason why, those first 2 years of credits don't count. Oh, I better be careful. Those first 2 years of credit are wonderful for experience, learning the world, doing English and math, but they will not count towards the bachelor's degree. If cost is something and you're right, have her do the first 2 years of community college. And here's why. Once you complete the first 2 years at a community college, that you're actually eligible with an associate's degree for some of the scholarship money out there to continue. For example, marine biology. In California, off the top of my head, Scripps Oceanographic Institute, I'm dehydrated, has an extern program, if she has an associate's degree, where they will probably fit the rest of the bill for her marine biology training. If she doesn't, here's where you need to have a good, serious talk with her. If she doesn't plan to go to a PhD level, then she needs to consider another way to become a mirror, or however, she wants to get in it. And I could, give some, but your specific, that would be the thing. And the other thing is, get your kids, all these kids, y'all, they want to see the world and all this stuff, one or two ways. If they're going to go into the military, let them do college credits first so they go in as an officer. No, I'm not knocking enlisted. But I think it's 16, they moved it up to maybe 32, I'm not familiar with them, where they go in as an officer. If that child is going to take the ASVAB test, you better let me tutor them for about 2 hours. Because I'm going to show them how to score high on the math word problems. There's a trick and a skill. And here's why I'm mentioning it. Years ago at Loma Linda, that's what I did. I went to San Bernardino, got a bunch of kids in the room who they were going to send in as enlisted. I taught them this technique, how to get 90% on the math word problems. And when they got their high scores, I told them, you now tell the enlisted recruiter you want to go over to the officer side. The ASVAB test is systematically designed to put most of our kids in the enlisted side. Nothing wrong with enlisted. But an O1, I'm not a military guy, we see the chaplain here, is way different than an E1. And by the way, you got a chaplain. He's bound by God to give you the best advice of making your life wonderful in the military. Why don't we use the black professionals that God has sent our way to get this information? Have any of your kids who are going into the military even talked to chaplain? Give them $30, take them to lunch. But extract all the knowledge you can from this man. Here's why I'm telling you to take him to lunch. Chaplain, I ain't going to get you in trouble. When he's on base, he's on official time. But if you take him to lunch, he could tell you, as we black people understand, how it really is. Okay, so, but that's what I would recommend, Yeah, and I could give her a little bit more guided advice. Last thing I'm going to say, I'm sorry. If you take out a student loan, look at the career you're investing in. You know what amazes me about my colleagues, these doctors? Oh, our student loans are so high. That's how they talk. Man, look, when you making $225,000, look, I'm letting you, look, I'm not saying I make that, so don't some of y'all get some ideas. I don't want to see letters showing up in my P.O. box. But what I'm trying to tell you is an average family practitioner right now, and California is not even the highest paying state. You got an angle where you want to go to pay off your student loans, but right now, one of the lower paying states in California, $225 a year. You can't pay off your student loans with that? So it looks at profession. My whining colleagues, they're just so used to getting everything served to them on a silver platter. If you go to San Francisco, that $225 turns into $275. If you go to Arizona and some other states, in other words, you got to look at the profession too, whether it's worth taking out a student loan. By the grace of God, all my student loans were paid back by the National Health Service Corps because I asked questions. I talked to black doctors that went broke, and I say ain't happening to this brother. The ones that I have left are actually from the PhD training because I behaved bad, and Loma Linda won't pay them because I left the PhD program and went somewhere else to finish. So, but that's on me. All right? Pastor smiling. Sister Bryant? Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. If you can't go online, at least speak to me, speak to the people who are in certain fields, speak to child. He's in the military because I remember one time I received an email, and I shared it with the church. Pastor, you weren't here at this time, where I got a direct email from Harvard, direct email from Johns Hopkins, where they were offering these summer scholarships, and then they were going to pay the full ride of students who qualify. And it didn't even have to do with medicine. I got zero response from the church people at that time. And just recently, Pensacola, Florida, I'm not sure what's going on there, but a major contractor was looking for certain skill sets that had to do with medical administration, et cetera, and have Pensacola, Florida, but they were hiring people who were willing to be contractors, not enlisted. You had to sign a 3-year contract, but the contractor communicated with me directly that don't tell the people up front, but they could negotiate student loan payoff. And you know what I did? I said, I'll try not to tell them up front that they could negotiate. But in other words, talk to the people who have information. And before, you do student loans or go into certain professions. Like I was saying, with Moses. Yeah, I always call him David because he's your height now. So sorry. I told Moses, when we were talking, I said, Moses, do your associates in nursing, get an RN, right? Because I told him that you could actually get scholarships, work, and finish your bachelor's in something else if you get an associate's in nursing. Nurses got a lot of money. But last thing I'm going to tell you, picking professions, I have an auntie. She's 80 years old. She was able to retire at 55. When she retired, I know she's going to get mad at me. Y'all don't know who she is. Okay? My auntie, from her nursing profession, her pension, and the nurses do it automatically. She gets $8,000 $16,000 a month from the New York Nurses Association. When you go into the nurses profession, get that RN license, you can be automatically enrolled into their nationwide retirement plan. My auntie has so much money. I keep lobbying for her to give it to me, and I'll hold on to it. Because she's 80 now. We don't know when he will come. But you got to have someone. No, she has so much money now. Every month, she's in another part of Africa. I'm like, Auntie, how many animals are there in Africa for you to be going on safaris? She said, boy, don't run your foolish tricks with me. I know you want some auntie's money. But nursing is a solid, and don't feel afraid if you're a man to get into nursing. If you want, go do baby steps, do MA, LVN, but the RN is the key. It will set you for life if you want to go that route. Matthew? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I saw his hand go up, but what he's doing is he's fixing his hair, Thank God you don't need a hot comb, son. Amen. Hallelujah. All righty. So, okay. Yeah, it's one of the many professions, okay? Just to give you an idea. But talk to the people who know, all right? Any other questions? Okay. All righty. So remember, if you want the, I only have a couple of them. I will give them out, but you got to promise me you give it to your youth. And if you want the app on your phone, I got to download it, and then I'll give you the gift card, and then you can go buy. Remember, we're still within the Sabbath hour, so be careful what you use the excess money to buy in the store. Oh, were you going to say something about it? Oh, okay.